Tiffany Moore Coleman put on the finishing touches of her makeup, scrutinizing her reflection. At 24, she could afford a minimum of makeup. Nature had given her flawless, dark, coffee-colored skin and expressive features. Through the mirror, she watched her husband, who was rummaging through the closet for a suitable tie. "Courtney, did you remember dinner at your father's?" she asked, keeping her mind on her work. "How could I forget? Daryl has called 3 times in the last 2 days," Courtney Coleman replied with slight irritation. "I don't understand why you're making such a fuss over a simple dinner. It's not just any dinner. Your father is opening a new restaurant. It's important to him." Tiffany put the brush aside and turned to her husband. Courtney, 27 years old, had the type of looks that didn't attract attention at first glance. Tall, with fine facial features, always neatly but discreetly dressed. A typical programmer. Everything about him is important to him. Courtney tightened his tie a little more than necessary. Tiffany walked over and gently loosened the knot. "Don't say that. Your father has always been good to me." "You bet he has," Courtney chuckled. "You're the only one who listens to him." Tiffany remained silent. The relationship between father and son had always been strained, but lately it had gotten worse. Daryl, a successful restaurateur, expected his son to follow in his footsteps. When Courtney chose computers, it was the first of many disappointments. Daryl's new restaurant was located in an upscale neighborhood in Redmond, a modern glass and stone building overlooking the lake. When they arrived, Daryl met them at the entrance. A 56-year-old man, stately, with barely noticeable gray in his dark hair, and a dazzling smile that showed off his perfect teeth. "My dears," he exclaimed, opening his arms. "Tiffany, you are simply radiant today." He kissed his daughter-in-law on the cheek, keeping his hand on her waist for a moment longer than he should have. Then turned to his son. "Courtney, I'm glad you were able to get away from your computers." "I always make time for family," Courtney replied, emphasizing the last word. Daryl led them through the main hall to a private office. Tiffany noted the impeccability of every detail, from the lighting to the designer dishes. "I designed this room myself," Daryl said, noticing her gaze, "for special guests." "Impressive," Tiffany replied sincerely. The evening got busy. Daryl talked about new projects. Courtney ate in silence, occasionally making sarcastic comments, and Tiffany tried to keep the conversation going. "How's your work going, Courtney?" Daryl asked when dessert was served. "It's okay," his son answered one-wordedly. "Are you still writing those codes?" "Still developing software, yeah," Courtney replied dryly. "What about you, Tiffany?" Daryl turned his full attention to his daughter-in-law. "How's your career in pharmaceuticals going?" "Stressful, but interesting. We're launching a new drug. I'm sure you'll do brilliantly." Daryl raised his glass of wine. "To successful women." Tiffany noticed Courtney's jaw clenched. She was uncomfortable with Daryl's obvious flirtation, but the attention was flattering. There was an energy and confidence in him that Courtney lacked. After dessert, Daryl suggested they stop by his house nearby. "Why?" Courtney asked. "It's getting late. I have some excellent cognac, and I want to show my new collection of rare plants." "That sounds interesting," said Tiffany. "Let's stop for a while." They drove a few blocks and stopped in front of a luxurious, modern mansion with well-maintained grounds. Inside, the house was even more impressive open floor plan, minimalist design, a collection of modern art. "What do you think?" Daryl asked, pouring cognac into glasses. "Amazing," Tiffany replied sincerely. "You have impeccable taste. What else can you expect from a man who spends so much on narcissism?" Courtney muttered quietly, but his father heard him. "Son, not everyone is content with mediocrity," Daryl replied coldly. "Some strive for more." Tiffany felt the atmosphere heat up. "Can I use the bathroom?" she asked. "Of course," Daryl replied. "Second floor, third door on the left." Tiffany went up the glass staircase. As she walked down the hallway, she heard the sound of water. The sound came from the ajar door on the right. She wanted to walk past it, but her gaze involuntarily slid into the crack. Standing in the steamy haze of the shower stall was a naked Daryl. Water ran down his surprisingly trim body. But it was another aspect of his anatomy that caught Tiffany's attention, and it was impressive. She froze in place. Suddenly, Daryl turned around and met her eyes. Instead of embarrassment, he smiled slowly and turned around slightly as if showing himself off. Tiffany recoiled, feeling the heat on her face. She quickly found the right bathroom, locked herself in and leaned against the door, trying to quiet her heartbeat. What was that? And why was she so excited about this moment? After washing herself with cold water, she went back downstairs. Daryl and Courtney sat in tense silence. Tiffany avoided her father-in-law's gaze. "I think we should go," Courtney said, glancing at his watch. "Already?" Daryl asked, keeping his eyes on Tiffany. "I wanted to show you the plant collection. Especially you, Tiffany. I know you appreciate beauty." "Some other time," Courtney answered for her. Tomorrow was a work day. At home, they went about their business. Courtney sat down at his computer. Work never ended for him. Tiffany took a shower, trying unsuccessfully to wash away the memories of what she had seen. The next day, while Tiffany was in the office, a text came in from an unfamiliar number. "Did you like what you saw yesterday?" She immediately realized who it was from. Her heart hammered faster. She should have resented it, blocked the number. Instead, Tiffany saved the contact under the name D. Another message came in the evening. "I'll expect you tomorrow at 7 at my house. Courtney will be at a conference in Seattle." It was true. Courtney was indeed leaving for Seattle for a 2-day technical conference. The next day, Tiffany left work early, citing indisposition. At home, she spent a long time choosing an outfit, settling on a simple black dress that emphasized her figure. At 7 in the evening, she stood in front of the door of Daryl's house. He opened before she rang the bell. "I knew you'd come," he said with a smile. Daryl was wearing jeans and a white shirt with the collar unbuttoned. In his hand, he held a glass of wine. "Come in." He stepped back, letting her pass. As she crossed the threshold, Tiffany felt her heart pounding. This was wrong. She should have left. But instead, she walked into the living room, where a bottle of wine and a second glass waited on the table. "You didn't respond to my texts," Daryl said, refilling the glass. "I wasn't sure you were coming." "I wasn't sure myself," she answered honestly. "But you're here." Daryl stepped closer. "Why?" "I don't know," Tiffany replied, sipping her wine. "I think you do." He touched her cheek. "You saw me and realized you wanted what Courtney couldn't give." It was arrogant, but Tiffany remained silent because somewhere inside she knew the truth. What followed merged into a whirlwind of sensations. His commanding kisses, confident hands tearing off her clothes, and a passion she hadn't realized was there. With Courtney, intimacy had always been gentle but predictable. Daryl was different, assertive and generously endowed by nature. He knew exactly how to deliver pleasure. Afterward, they lay on his huge bed. Daryl smoked, blowing smoke toward the ceiling. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About being a horrible person," Tiffany replied, pulling the sheet up. Daryl grinned. "Why? Because you took what you wanted? Because you betrayed your husband, with his father. Courtney can't find out." Daryl turned to her. "It will be our secret." His fingers slid over her shoulder, and Tiffany felt the desire again. "I have to go," she said, but didn't move. "Stay," Daryl whispered. Courtney wouldn't be back until tomorrow night, and she stayed. It was the first time, but not the last. They started seeing each other 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes Daryl even arranged business trips for his son through his contacts in the technology field. Tiffany knew what she was doing was terrible, but she couldn't stop. Daryl had become her obsession. He made her feel not only desirable as a woman, but as an equal. He was interested in her opinion, shared her plans. Her relationship with Courtney became increasingly strained. He noticed her aloofness and late returns. "What's going on?" he asked one night. "You're different." "What do you mean?" "You're distant. You're hardly ever home. And when you're here, it's like you're not." In the dim nightlight, Courtney looked tired and lost. Tiffany felt a prick of conscience. "I have a lot of work to do, and you're always with the computers too." "It's not that. I feel like something's wrong." She hugged him, trying to calm them both down. "It's just a rough patch." Courtney pulled away and looked into her eyes. "I love you, Tiffany, but I'm not stupid. Something's going on." That night they slept separately, Tiffany lay in the guest room thinking about how messed up everything was. The next day, Daryl called. "I miss you. Come over tonight." "I can't. Courtney suspects something." "I don't care. I want to see you." "Daryl, this is crazy. He's your son." "So what? He's always gotten what he wanted. Now it's my turn." His words got me thinking. What did their relationship mean to Daryl? Was it just a game, a way to assert his superiority over his son? "I'm not coming tonight," she said firmly. "We need to be more careful." "All right," Daryl agreed reluctantly. "But you have to come tomorrow. I'll make dinner." Tiffany smiled. Daryl rarely cooked for himself, preferring chefs for his restaurants. But he made an exception for her. In the evening, Courtney returned with a bouquet, the first time in a long time. He suggested dinner at a little restaurant they had frequented early in their relationship. Tiffany agreed, feeling a mixture of gratitude and guilt. Over dinner, they talked about work, about plans, avoiding last night's topic. Courtney was attentive, caring, just like before. For a moment, Tiffany thought things might get better, but then her phone vibrated, a message from Daryl. "Looking forward to tomorrow. I'll have a surprise for you." The next day before her visit with Daryl, Tiffany sat in her car for a long time. What was she doing? Where was everything leading? Sooner or later, Courtney would find out the truth. And then what? Nevertheless, she drove. As promised, Daryl made dinner. Seafood, her favorite. For dessert, strawberries and champagne. They made love again, and Tiffany again experienced the passion that had been so lacking in her marriage. Afterward, she decided to talk. "What's next, Daryl?" "What do you mean?" He lay with his hands behind his head. "I mean us. This can't go on forever." "Why not? You like it." "But Courtney, he suspects something. Courtney will never give you what I'm giving you." Daryl ran his hand down her back. "In every way." "It's not just sex." "It's not?" He grinned. "About his IT salary? His boring life? You deserve better than that, Tiffany." She started to get dressed. "Don't you even think how I feel?" "Of course I do. I can see how good it makes you feel to be with me." "I'm not talking about physical pleasure. I'm talking about feelings." Daryl stood up and put his arm around her waist. "Tiffany, I saw you then at the reception and I knew I wanted you. I introduced you to Courtney because I knew that's how you would become a part of my life. And here you are. Isn't that fate?" His words were shocking. Had he planned this from the beginning? Used his own son? "I have to go," she said, pulling away. "Tiffany," Daryl grabbed her hand. "Don't go. We can work this out. You can divorce Courtney." "What? Divorce? Free yourself from a marriage that doesn't fulfill you. Be with me." "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. I can give you everything. Travel, luxury, passion. What's keeping you with him?" Tiffany wondered. What was keeping her? Did she still love Courtney? Or had she just gotten used to him? When was the last time she'd been truly happy in their marriage? "I need to think," she finally said. "Don't think too long," Daryl replied, kissing her. "I'm not the most patient person." That night, lying next to a sleeping Courtney, Tiffany thought seriously about divorce for the first time. About a new life with Daryl. It seemed crazy, but something inside was pulling her toward this forbidden passion. In the morning, she decided to talk to her husband. If not the whole truth, then at least part of it. Their marriage was over. They both deserved a chance at happiness with someone else. It was only a matter of choosing the right moment. It was a cool morning, unusual for early September in Redmond. Daryl Coleman's gardener, Sam Parker, started work at 6 a.m. every day. Today, he planned to trim the hedge around the guest house on the far side of the property. Daryl rarely used it, preferring to house guests in the main house where he could show off his collection of art and rare plants. As he approached the cabin, Sam noticed the door was ajar. This struck him as odd. Mr. Coleman had always been pedantic about security. Sam stepped up onto the porch and cautiously peeked inside. "Is anyone there?" He called out, getting no response. Something told him to go in. The living room was empty, but the neatly arranged furniture looked untouched. There were 2 glasses and an open bottle of wine on the coffee table. Sam walked further in and stopped at the bedroom door. What he saw made him drop the garden shears and step back, clamping his hand over his mouth. On the bed lay the body of a woman, her dark skin contrasted with the white sheets, partially stained purple. Her eyes were open but lifeless. Finger marks were visible on her neck. Sam recognized the deceased as Mr. Coleman's sister-in-law, Mrs. Tiffany Moore Coleman. She often came over when the owner was away. The gardener didn't go into details. He was paid well just for doing his job and not asking questions. With trembling hands, Sam pulled out his cell phone and dialed 9111. Emergency services. What's your emergency? I found a body. Murder, I think, in Mr. Coleman's guest house. The address is 17 Lakeside Avenue. 15 minutes later, the area around Daryl's mansion was cordoned off by police. Detective Raina Clark was one of the first to arrive. A 38-year-old woman with close-cropped hair and an attentive gaze, she had a reputation as one of the best detectives in Redmond. Her recent divorce had only increased her dedication to the job. "What do we got?" Raina asked, approaching the officer who was coordinating the crime scene. "Female, 24 years old, strangled, presumably last night. Found by a gardener around 6:30 this morning. You got an ID?" "Yeah, it's Tiffany Moore Coleman, daughter-in-law of the homeowner, lives downtown with her husband." "Does the husband know yet?" Officers went to call it in. Raina nodded and headed toward the guest house. Before entering, she put on booties, gloves, and a mask as protocol required. Inside, the forensics team was already at work, taking pictures and gathering evidence. "Time of death?" Raina asked the medical examiner who was examining the body. "Preliminarily between 22 hours and midnight," he replied. "Cause of death is most likely strangulation. The fingerprints on the neck are clearly male, judging by the size. There were signs of a struggle, but not a violent one. The victim probably knew her attacker and didn't expect aggression. Any signs of sexual assault? No. But there was voluntary sexual intercourse shortly before death, within the hour." Raina walked around the room, scrutinizing every detail. There was a woman's cell phone on the nightstand. She made a mental note to access the data. On the floor by the bed, she noticed a single silver cufflink with the initials DK, Daryl Coleman, most likely. "Where's the homeowner?" she asked the officer standing at the entrance. "In the main building. Says he woke up when the police arrived and didn't know about the incident." Raina raised an eyebrow skeptically. "That's his sister-in-law dead in his guest house, and he didn't know anything? Interesting." Daryl Coleman sat in the living room of his house, dressed in a silk robe. He looked calm, but Raina immediately noted the tension in his eyes. "Mr. Coleman, I'm Detective Raina Clark. I need to ask you some questions about Tiffany Moore Coleman." "Of course, Detective. It's a terrible tragedy. I still can't believe it." "When was the last time you saw her?" 2 days ago. The three of us had dinner. Me, Tiffany, and my son Courtney, her husband." "And you never saw her again? No contact?" Daryl paused, as if considering an answer. "No, I haven't." "Where were you last night?" "Here at home. I worked on the new restaurant projects, then went to bed around 23. "Can anyone confirm that?" "No, I was alone. The housekeeper leaves at 5 p.m. "Did you know Tiffany was in your guest house?" Daryl paused again. "No, I had no idea. Why would she come here?" "That's odd, considering you and her were in a relationship." Daryl's face tensed slightly, but he quickly regained control. "I don't know what you mean." Raina pulled out a plastic bag containing a cufflink. "Are these yours?" Daryl looked at the cufflinks and nodded slowly. "Yes, it's mine, but that doesn't prove anything. I sometimes use the guest house for business meetings." "With your sister-in-law?" "Detective, I see where you're going with this, and I assure you that there was nothing more than a familial relationship between me and Tiffany. She was my son's wife." Raina made a note in her notebook. It was obvious that Daryl was understating things, but not enough evidence to make accusations yet. "Okay, Mr. Coleman, that's all for now, but don't leave town without telling me. I'll have more questions." As Raina left Daryl's house, she got a call. Courtney Coleman had arrived on the scene and demanded to see his wife. Raina found him at the police tape, restrained by 2 officers. His face was contorted with shock and grief. "Mr. Coleman, I'm Detective Raina Clark. I'm very sorry for your loss." "I need to see her." His voice shook. "There must be some mistake. Tiffany couldn't—" "You can see her later at the morgue. Right now I need to ask you some questions." Courtney was led into the police car, where it was quieter. He looked a wreck, pale, red-eyed, hands shaking. "When was the last time you saw your wife?" "This morning. I left for work at 7. She was still asleep. Or I thought she was asleep." "Did you know she was going to visit your father's house?" "No." Courtney shook his head. "I thought she was at work. She was supposed to be at work." "Were there problems between you two? Fights?" Courtney paused, then lowered his head. "Lately, yeah. Tiffany's changed. Distant. Coming home late talking about work. But I sensed something was wrong." "Did you suspect infidelity?" "Yeah, I don't know, maybe. But I never thought—" His voice broke. "Who did this? Who killed my wife?" "We're looking into it, Mr. Coleman. Where were you last night between the hours of 11 and midnight?" "At work. We had a product launch. I worked late. I got home around 1 a.m., and Tiffany was gone. I figured she was at a friend's house. She sometimes stayed with her sister Janine." "Do you have an alibi? Can anyone confirm that you were at work?" "Sure, the whole development team. There were 10 of us." Raina took notes. The story sounded plausible, but it needed to be verified. "Do you know if your wife had any enemies? Anyone who would want to hurt her?" "No, everybody loved Tiffany. She was, a bright person." "What about your father? What was their relationship like?" Courtney tensed up. "Normal, like a son-in-law and a father-in-law. Why do you ask?" "Just trying to get a full picture," Raina replied evasively. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Coleman. If you think of anything important, give me a call." She left her card and got out of the car. Now she had 2 prime suspects, her husband and her father-in-law. Both were hiding something, but Raina couldn't yet determine what it was or which one was involved in the murder. The next step was to visit Tiffany's place of employment. At Nova Health, the pharmaceutical company where Tiffany worked as a PR person, her co-workers were shocked at the news of her death. Tiffany's closest friend, Michelle, said that over the past few months, Tiffany had been taking frequent absences from work, citing family matters. "She said she was happy," Michelle said, wiping away tears. "But not with her husband. She was seeing someone, but she wouldn't say who, just that he was older and could give her everything she dreamed of." "Did she mention the name Daryl?" Michelle thought for a moment. "No, never mentioned names. But one day a text came through on her phone and I happened to see that the contact was just the letter D." Raina thanked Michelle for the information and left the building when she got a call from the station. "Detective Clark? We have a woman here, identified herself as the victim's sister, Janine Moore. Says she has some important information." "I'm on my way," Raina answered and headed to the station. Janine Moore, a 26-year-old woman who looked a lot like the late Tiffany, sat in the visitor's room. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she held herself together. "Ms. Moore, I'm Detective Raina Clark. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Janine replied quietly. "I came because I know something about Tiffany, something important. I'm listening." "Tiffany was meeting with her father-in-law, Daryl Coleman," Janine said bluntly, unabashedly. "For months now." Raina showed no surprise, though the confirmation of her suspicions was valuable. "She told you?" "Yes. She didn't want to at first, but then she confessed. Said she was in love with him and was going to leave Courtney. She was planning on talking to her husband this week." "And how did she describe her relationship with Daryl?" "Passionate, intense. He promised her the life she dreamed of. Travel, luxury, freedom from financial worries. Tiffany, she always wanted more. We didn't grow up in the most affluent family, and financial well-being was important to her. Do you think Courtney might have known that?" Janine shook her head. "I'm not sure. Tiffany said they were very careful. But the last time we spoke, 3 days ago, she seemed worried. Said Courtney suspected something, was asking questions." "Did Daryl know about her plans to divorce her?" "Yeah. In fact, it was his idea. He said they could go to Europe together for a few months until things settled down." Raina took some notes. The picture was starting to emerge, but there was still a key element missing, a sufficient motive for murder. "Do you know if Tiffany had her cell phone with her when she went to Daryl's house yesterday?" "Of course she never left it behind. Always on call, that's the job. We found it at the crime scene. Can you give us the password? It'll help the investigation." Her date of birth, August 13th, 2000, 13-08800. Back at the crime scene, Raina gave the password to the technical expert who was working on Tiffany's phone. A few minutes later, he beckoned her over. "Detective, you should see this." There are deleted messages on the phone that we were able to recover. On the screen was a correspondence with contact D. The last messages were dated yesterday afternoon. D. I'll meet you at the guest house at 9. I have a surprise. Tiffany. On my way out. I can't wait to see you. D. Me too. By the way, I've made all the arrangements for our departure, tickets, hotels. As soon as you tell Courtney we're leaving. Tiffany. I'm nervous. It's not going to be easy. D. He'll get through it. After all, he's always just had a job. The last message was sent to Tiffany at 21:45. I'm in position. Is the door open? There was no reply. Raina looked through the other correspondences as well. There was a sense of growing suspicion in Courtney's messages over the past week. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Can we talk? I think something is wrong. Have you been to your dad's? His assistant saw your car. Courtney's last text was sent at 16:30 yesterday. We need to have a serious talk. I know everything, Tiffany. Check her travel routes through the navigation apps, Raina asked. Already on it, the technician replied. There's one more thing. Tiffany made a voice recording last night at 21:48. It looks like an accidental activation, but there's a conversation there. He turned on the recording. First footsteps were heard, the rustle of clothes, then Tiffany's voice. Daryl, are you here? Then a male voice muffled. I thought you'd never come. The sound of a kiss. Then Tiffany says, I talked to Janine. I think I'll tell Courtney tomorrow. I can't live a lie anymore. The recording cut off. Raina thought about it for a moment. She now had confirmation that Tiffany was planning to leave her husband for his father, and Courtney did indeed seem to know about it. Was that motive enough for murder? A lot of people have killed for less. Check the security camera footage around the perimeter of the house, Raina ordered, and find me proof of where Courtney Coleman was last night. Contact his work, check the cameras, everything you can. An hour later, one of the detectives reported back. We interviewed Courtney's co-workers. He was indeed at work until 11 in last night. 6 co-workers confirmed that. But between 11:30 and 11:30, he went out, said he needed to get some air. He came back about a half hour later. Enough time to get to his father's house, if he knew Tiffany was there, Raina said thoughtfully. One more thing, detective. We found soil particles on the shoes in Courtney's apartment. Preliminary analysis shows it's identical to the one on Daryl's property. Some kind of specific fertilizer for rare plants was recently applied there. Raina nodded. The evidence was starting to come together. Courtney had learned of his wife's infidelity with his own father. He may have even learned of plans to run away. For a proud man, especially one who had been in the shadow of a successful father all his life, this was the last straw. Now she needed to find one last piece of evidence that would link Courtney to the crime scene at the exact moment of the murder. And maybe that evidence was already in their hands, in the victim's phone or in the CCTV footage that was still being analyzed. Raina glanced at the picture of Tiffany her sister had handed her. A young, beautiful woman, with a bright smile and ambition. Her life had been cut short by a complicated love triangle that mixed passion, betrayal, and possibly revenge. We'll find who did this, Raina promised quietly, looking at the photograph. And he'll answer for it. Raina Clark sat in her office, surrounded by message printouts, crime scene photos, and expert reports. The second 24 hours of the investigation, and she'd barely slept. The murder of Tiffany Moore Coleman had gotten a lot of publicity in the local media. A young woman strangled to death in the guest house of a wealthy restaurateur and a father-son love triangle. So far, she had 2 prime suspects, Daryl Coleman, the victim's lover and owner of the house where the murder had occurred, and Courtney Coleman, Tiffany's husband, who had apparently learned of his wife's affair with his own father. Both had a motive. Daryl's was fear of losing his reputation if the affair came to light, perhaps refusing Tiffany's planned escape. Courtney had jealousy and humiliation. But Daryl didn't have a solid alibi for the time of the murder, while Courtney seemed to have a solid Cover 6 co-workers confirmed his presence at work before 11 o'clock at night. And yet Raina sensed that something didn't add up here. Courtney's 30-minute absence from work had coincided with the time of Tiffany's death. Was that enough time to drive to his father's house, commit the murder, and return? Perhaps if he drove very fast and knew exactly where his wife was. Her musings were interrupted by a phone call. "Detective Clark? This is Technician Morris from the lab. We tested the smart speaker we found in Daryl Coleman's guest house. It was set to automatically activate at certain sounds, and there's a recording from the night of the murder, around 2:31:15. "What's on the tape?" Raina was instantly alert. Voices. A female, presumably the victim's, and a male. They're arguing. The woman says something like, "I'm leaving you for him. You never gave me what I needed." Then the male voice, "You can't do that. Not to him, not to my father." Then the noise of a struggle and, were you able to identify the male voice? Preliminary analysis shows a high probability of matching Courtney Coleman's voice from the corporate video interview samples you sent over. But we'll need a more thorough forensic analysis for trial. Send me the tape. And don't tell anyone else about this. Raina hung up the phone and took a deep breath. If the tape was authentic, it could be crucial evidence against Courtney. But she still needed to check how he could have gotten to the crime scene so quickly. She called one of her deputies over to her. "Check traffic cameras within a 2-mile radius of Courtney Coleman's tech company and his house. Look for his car, black Audi A4, license plate number I know. Especially interested in the time between 22:30 and 23:45. "I'll do it." The assistant nodded and left. Raina decided to talk to Daryl Coleman again. Perhaps under the pressure of the new evidence, he would be more forthcoming. Daryl met her at his restaurant, in the same private office where he had once dined with his son and daughter-in-law. He looked as calm and collected as the last time she'd seen him, but Raina noticed the shadows under his eyes. Tiffany's death had clearly taken its toll on him. "Detective Clark, what can I do for you?" he asked, pointing to her chair. "Mr. Coleman, I have some new questions. We know about your relationship with Tiffany." Daryl didn't show any surprise. "I don't know what you're talking about. Let's not waste time. We have witness statements, messages from her phone, even a voice recording of her talking about plans to leave your son for you. We know you were planning to move abroad together." Daryl was silent for a moment, looking at her appraisingly, then nodded slightly. "Good. Yes, we were in a relationship. Yes, we planned to be together. But I didn't kill her." "Then where were you the night she died?" "I told you. Home, working, then sleeping." "And you weren't at the guest house?" "No," Daryl answered firmly. "I made an appointment with Tiffany for the next day. We were supposed to discuss the details of our departure." "Then why was she there? And why was your cufflink found at the scene?" Daryl frowned. "I don't know why she came in early. Maybe she wanted to get ready, take a look around. As for the cufflinks, I was there the day before, making sure everything was ready for our meeting. I must have lost it then." "That's a convenient explanation," Raina said with a hint of skepticism. "Tell me, Mr. Coleman, did your son know about your plans?" "No, of course not. We were very careful." "But did he suspect?" Daryl sighed. "Perhaps he did. In recent weeks, Courtney had started asking questions. Tiffany said he'd been watching her movements, checking her phone. Do you think Courtney might have killed his wife if he'd found out about you?" "My son?" Daryl shook his head. "I don't know. He's always been quiet, withdrawn. But sometimes in the quietest of people there's an unexpected rage." "Did you two have a good relationship?" "Not particularly," Daryl admitted. "We were never close. I wanted him to follow in my footsteps, become a restaurateur. But he chose computers. It was like we were speaking different languages from then on." "And Tiffany became the bridge between you two?" Daryl smiled slightly. "At first, yes. She had a way of finding common ground with anyone. But then, it got complicated." Raina noticed his eyes moisten. Maybe he really did love Tiffany. Or maybe he was a good actor. "Mr. Coleman, I need a record of your movements that night. Surveillance footage from your house, your car's GPS." "Of course, Detective. My attorney will provide everything you need. I want the killer found as much as you do." When Raina got back to the station, she had news waiting for her. A deputy had found Courtney's car on traffic cameras a few blocks from Daryl's mansion at about 23 o'clock, right around the time of his supposed absence from work. "He was speeding," the deputy explained, showing the tape. "He broke the speed limit, but the camera clearly caught the license plate." "And the return trip?" "It's there too, right here at 23:32, on his way to the office." "He made it," Raina murmured. He'd gotten to his father's house, killed his wife, and gotten back in exactly 30 minutes when he hadn't been at work. That still might not have been enough to convict, but now Raina was sure Courtney was lying about her movements the night of the murder. She decided to dig deeper. "What do we have on Courtney Coleman's financial situation?" she asked the analyst who was handling that part of the investigation. "An interesting picture," he replied. "On the surface, everything looks good. Good salary in a technology company, expensive apartment, car. But digging deeper, we found problems, large loan debts, several failed investments. Looks like he was trying to prove his financial independence from his father, but he put himself in a hole. And here's what's interesting. In the last 2 months, he's twice borrowed large sums from his father. Apparently, Daryl Coleman was actually saving his son from bankruptcy." "Did Tiffany know about this?" "Not according to the emails we recovered from her cell phone. Courtney kept the truth from her. She thought they were stable. So in addition to personal betrayal, Tiffany leaving her father would mean financial ruin for Courtney," Raina concluded. The motives were becoming more and more numerous. At that moment, her phone rang again. It was the technician working on the evidence from the guest house. "Detective, we've finished analyzing the smart speaker. In addition to the conversation recording, there's something else." The speaker recorded a voice activation command at 2311. The command was given in a male voice, which is 90% certain to be Courtney Coleman's. He activated the recording mode. It looked like he'd intentionally left the device on to record the conversation. "That's odd," Raina observed. "Why would he leave evidence against himself? Maybe he wasn't planning a murder? Maybe he just wanted proof of the affair?" "Maybe," Raina thought for a moment. That would explain why the conversation with Tiffany had been recorded, but it wouldn't explain why he didn't take or destroy the column afterward. "People often don't think rationally when under the influence," the technician suggested. "Right. Thank you for the information." Raina disconnected and immediately made a decision. "Prepare an arrest warrant for Courtney Coleman. We have enough evidence." An hour later, Raina and 2 officers arrived at Courtney's apartment. He opened the door, looking haggard and lost. He seemed to have aged several years in the intervening days. "Mr. Coleman, you're under arrest for the murder of Tiffany Moore Coleman," Raina announced, showing the warrant. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law." Courtney didn't resist. He silently listened to his rights, allowed himself to be handcuffed and led out of the apartment. It wasn't until he was in the police car that he finally spoke. "You don't understand. I loved her. I always loved her." "Then why did you kill her?" Raina asked, looking at him through the rearview mirror. Courtney lowered his eyes. "I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't plan it." In the interrogation room, Raina laid out the evidence in front of Courtney. The recording from the smart speaker, the camera data showing his car near his father's house, the soil particles on his shoes that matched the soil on Daryl's property. "We know you were there, Courtney. We know you killed Tiffany. The only thing we don't know is why. What happened that night?" Courtney was silent for a long time, then took a deep breath. "I found out about them a few weeks ago. Tiffany had become distant, coming back late. I checked her phone, saw the messages. I didn't believe it at first. My wife and my father? How is that possible?" He stopped talking, collecting his thoughts. "I followed her. I saw them meeting. The way he hugs her, kisses her." His voice shook. "I wanted to talk to her, make her think. I wasn't planning to kill her. I just wanted her to come back to me." "But you set the smart speaker to record. You were planning something." "I wanted proof for the divorce." He grinned bitterly. "I thought if I had a recording of their conversation, I could get some compensation. My father had spent my whole life humiliating me, treating me like a loser, and now he's taken my wife." "What happened at the guest house?" Courtney closed his eyes, remembering. "I arrived early, activated the speaker, and hid in the next room. Tiffany came in, waiting for my father, but I couldn't stand it, and came out to her. We started arguing. She said she was leaving me, that she loved him, that he could give her everything I could never have. She didn't even apologize, you know. Said it was my own fault for working too hard, not paying attention to her." His eyes filled with tears. "And then she said that she and my father laughed at me, that my father always thought I was a loser, and now she thinks so too, that he was, better than me at everything. Even in bed, his face contorted in pain. Something in me broke. I grabbed her by the shoulders and started shaking her, screaming that she couldn't do this to me. She tried to break free, screaming that she hated me. And then my hands were around her neck. I don't remember how it happened. I just remember her eyes, full of fear. And then she stopped breathing. Raina remained silent, letting him continue. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. I panicked, wiped everything I could, and drove back to work to create an alibi for myself. I didn't even think about the smart speaker. I just wanted to get out of there. Why did you go back to work? Why didn't you run? Where would I have gone? Courtney asked bitterly. Without Tiffany, I have nothing left. I hoped no one would connect me to her death, that they would think of my father. Did you hate your father enough to frame him? He deserved it, Courtney replied harshly. All my life he made me feel like I wasn't good enough, not successful enough, and then he took the only thing I had. My wife, my Tiffany. Raina closed the file folder. Courtney Coleman, you are officially charged with the first-degree murder of Tiffany Moore Coleman. You will be transferred to the county jail until your trial. As he was led away, Raina was alone in the interrogation room. The case was solved, the killer confessed. But she felt no satisfaction, only sadness at how destructive human passions and resentments can be. A week later, Raina met Daryl Coleman at Tiffany's grave. He brought a bouquet of white roses. You know, I really loved her, he said without looking at Raina. It wasn't just an affair or a way to hurt Courtney. You used her, Raina countered. Introduced her to your son, knowing you wanted her for yourself. That's cruel. Maybe, Daryl agreed. But in the end, we all got what we deserved, didn't we? Tiffany for her betrayal, Courtney for her rage, and I lost both my son and the woman I loved. He put the flowers on the grave and walked away without looking back. Raina watched him go, thinking about the fragility of human relationships and how easily love can turn into hate and passion into tragedy. The case of Tiffany Moore Coleman was closed. Justice had been served, the murderer confessed, and awaited trial. But none of the participants in this drama could not consider himself a winner. In a love triangle where passion, jealousy, and betrayal played, could not be a happy ending.